Welcome to GloverChat Episode 2, Taking the Next Step When You Don't Know the Whole Path. Today, I want to reflect and talk about what it looks like sometimes to take the next step of faith in something that God is calling you to when you don't know where this whole thing is going. And I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to me in my life where I felt that God was calling me to something. And I knew that I needed to follow him, but I didn't really understand where this whole thing was heading. And so that's something I want to reflect on because honestly, that's something I'm going through right now is this journey with God that I'm walking in, especially as an author, as a creator, which is what a lot of these reflections in Glover Chat are going to be about, and my personal life and life in general and things. But in a lot of things that I feel God calling me to, I don't really know the end goal of the whole thing. I mentioned in the last episode that a lot of time our callings aren't the end goal in and of themselves. A lot of times they are a preparation, they are character development, they are faith builders, they are services to other people. And so when we take callings into the context of that they're not an end goal in and of themselves, then a lot of times, if you're like me, you might end up asking where, this calling or this thing God has you doing is ultimately going to lead. But God doesn't always reveal the entire path to us. Sometimes God calls us to step out into something, to begin something, to start something, to walk in something, and we don't know really where we're headed. Or we might think we do, and we have no idea what that is going to be like. It's funny. I go back, I'm looking at my notes here, but I think about times in my life when I felt called to do something and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Case in point, um, this is just a situation that happened in my life that I reflect on often. It's not a humble brag at all, but it might sound like that. Forgive me if it does. It's not the point. But whenever I was graduating from DBU with my master's, I remember being at the graduation ceremony. And I was sitting in the first row of the master's graduates, and in front of me came and sat down everybody who was graduating with their doctorates, with PhDs, EDDs, and this thought came into my mind, which now I would say it was the Holy Spirit prompting me, but just telling me that's what's next for you. Um, And yeah, everybody loves the accolades of graduating and getting a high degree in the next level. But I truly felt that it was God calling me because I had no business in my mind pursuing a doctorate. I had no idea what it was going to take to get one. I had no idea what the path was going to be like. I had no idea. All I knew is that God kind of laid this thing in my heart and said, "This is your next step in your educational journey." And that was a massive step. That took a lot of little steps. Um, and so walking in that took a lot of time, took a lot of prayer, took a lot. Let's just say it like that. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And truthfully, even as I reflect on that now, the doctorate was not the end goal. Honestly, when I look at that, that was all preparation and character development and knowledge acquisition and relationship building and so many good things to prepare me for the next things that God had for me, to prepare me more for pastoral leadership and ministry, and to prepare me for school leadership and ministry, which I'm currently serving in vocationally. And so it's funny when I think back on it now, there was a time when my end goal was that degree. And now I realize that it was just a step that God was calling me to. It was just the first step that would be followed by another step and another. So I'm thinking about these things. That's something that I've seen God do in my life. And then now I'm reflecting on the things that I feel that God is calling me to. In this writing and creating journey, the truth is I have so many ideas and things in my mind that I want to do, that I want to do. But where I kind of find myself right now is this place of walking with God and asking, what is it that you want me to do, God? Not what do I want, not my flesh, not my pride, not my ego, which I'm just as prone to as everyone, and not what do people expect of me, not what do others say I need to be doing. But I've really been asking the question. I mean, I've been filling out page after page of my journals of asking God what faithfulness and what obedience to his calling in this arena looks like right now in my life. And so that's something that I'm currently walking in because I do feel him calling me to take steps, to take on different projects, and I don't have the full map laid out. I just feel he's calling me, and I feel like obedience in this season is to take that first step. But if we're honest, that's really tough, especially when God calls you into things that you've never done before or you're really uncertain about. You trust in him, you believe he can do anything through anyone at any time, but you still question if you can do this. You question if it's from God. You question if you're hearing him properly. And these are all things that I deal with all the time, probably way too much. And so one of the things that I'm walking through with God is this constant distinguishing between his will and my ambition. And I think the thing that I've found for me, there's no prescriptive thing in the Bible for this, especially when we're talking about specific will. Obviously, you have general will, which God wants you to believe. He wants you to follow Christ. He wants you to grow in knowledge and wisdom. He wants you to evangelize. Obviously, there's things that God wants everybody to do. But when we get into specific callings for your life and in the roles and the things that He has just for you, because I'm a firm believer, there are things that only you are called to do in this world. Um, and to navigate that between what is his will and what is my ambition or my flesh or whatever, what's been helping me is I have been journaling a lot for the past few years, a lot of journaling, and they're kind of all over the place. But one of the things I do is I'm very intentional about writing down the things that I'm sensing, I'm feeling, or I'm wanting, or I'm being led to. And I write them down as honestly and openly as I can, and I submit them to him. And I'll literally write it in writing. Like I will write, God, here's this thing I'm feeling, this pull to this desire for this idea, but I submit it to you. I ask you to direct me. I ask you to guide me. I ask you to show me the path as I continue to walk. Because very rarely, if ever, does he show us the end. I don't get prophetic visions like we see in the scripture sometimes. All I get a lot of times are nudges, are feelings, are these things that keep coming back to me. And so that's one of the ways that I've personally kind of found is to be very honest with God and myself. And journaling really helps me because I can go back and I can reread and I can look through those things and see if this is me or if this is maybe him. And then I like to go back and let those writings, because I date them, I put the day, the time, the day of the week, even, and I'll go back and read them. And those things that do or are confirmed, I know that was God speaking or leading me. And then the things that aren't, I tend to think of, well, that was me. And so I try to learn. That's one of the ways that I've been trying to navigate this with Him, the difference between His will and my ambition as I'm taking the next faithful step, whatever that looks like. Again, right now it's like looks like starting this podcast, especially with the video component. That's the big kicker. The video component and doing the podcast by myself. But just starting this up, doing these first few episodes, feel like the first step of faith for this. And I don't know where this thing is heading. It may have a very short shelf life. I may do a handful of episodes, and it may have just been God asking me to do something and me walking in obedience. And that builds me up. That builds up my character, my integrity, my faith. That builds up my boldness, my confirmation in Him. So many personal things that have nothing to do with starting a podcast. It's not always about the calling itself. The calling can have such deeper purposes. And ultimately, the purposes are to benefit others, they're to glorify the kingdom, they're to build you up in your faith. They're not to be used for selfish ambition or gain. And so again, these are things that I'm just walking out. And I'm remembering, I'm having to remind myself, God doesn't always tell us the whole plan. I wish He would, especially this time of year. Everybody starts making their end of the year New Year's resolutions. I actually start that process earlier and earlier every year. This year, I started back in October, I want to say, back in October. And I go through this thing where I reflect on the whole year. It's kind of become a system at this point where I have all these questions and reflections and prayers and all this thing. And I will say that process has been the greatest thing in my spiritual walk, is doing that every year, being very intentional about the things I'm feeling led to and writing it down and walking with God in those things. Because when I go back and look at them from 2, 3 years ago, it is so wild how much it builds up my faith to see the things that God has done. And even amidst really hard things and really hard times, seeing God's faithfulness through those journals has really helped me. So if you're not a journaler, I would just have to tell you, you're missing out. It feels awkward at first. I can attest to you, the first times I did it, it was just probably me rambling on the paper. Now it feels a little bit smoother, but it's become something I do very regularly. Not every day, but something very, very regularly, that has really helped me with God. Because again, He doesn't always give us the whole map. It might just be the first step. He might give you directions for a season, but it might be a limited time. But whatever He's calling you to, it's about walking faithfully with Him. This past year, one of the stories I kind of identified this process with was going back to Peter, whenever they just Jesus fed the 5,000. And then He tells the disciples, get in the boat, go across the Sea of Galilee. And He stayed back to pray and be alone with the Father. And then at midnight, there's a big storm that comes up. They're all in the boat and they see this guy come walking on the water, and it's Jesus. And Peter sees Him and he says, Lord, if it's you, command me to come out to you. And Jesus invites him to come out onto the water. Let's just pause there for a second and think about this practically. You're in the boat, you're one of the disciples, you see Jesus, storms raging all around you. It is crazy. You're like, Jesus, if that's really you, tell me to come out to you. And He says, okay, come on out of the boat. I mean, where did Peter think this was going? You're getting out of the boat. You can't walk on water, Peter. He's out there and you want to be with him. But then I'm thinking the practical side of me is like, Peter, what happens once you get out there to him? I don't know that Peter thought that far ahead with this. Anyways, he gets out of the boat and he walks to Jesus. And it's just this beautiful picture of faith and obedience and taking the step and not understanding how any of this works, right? We get called by God to do things and we think we got to have the whole plan, everything figured out, everything mapped out, a system to make it happen. and, and it's not like that all the time. Sometimes it's just stepping out of the boat and walking by faith. And that's what Peter did. And that's what I want to do. And I hope that's what you want to do. It's these times when Jesus calls us, step out of the boat. I hope we have the faith enough to say, I don't know how this works. I don't know what it looks like when I get out there. I don't know what it's going to feel like. I've never walked on the water. I don't know anything about what's about to happen, Jesus, other than you told me to move towards you. And I want to be obedient and I just want to be with you. And that's the kind of faith that I want to have in every area of my life. That's the kind of faith that I want to walk in daily as a follower of Jesus, as a father, as a husband, as a man, as a leader, as an educator, as a whatever. I want that boldness of faith everywhere I go. I want to have so much trust in Jesus that when he says, step out of the boat, my first reaction is to start walking. So that's the picture that I've had in my mind of what it looks like to take a step of faith when you don't have the full map of where you're headed. And that's how I'm trying to live right now. And honestly, I don't always get that right. There are areas in my life where I can say, I'm doing pretty good at this. And then there's other areas where, when I'm honest, I'm not doing great at it. I'm trying to be in control. I'm trying to tell God what the end result looks like. I'm trying to make it happen my way. And it's okay to have plans and systems and all those good things. Those are not bad at all. So I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't be wise. The Bible has a whole lot to say about wisdom and our actions and decisions, our businesses, all that. But what I am saying is that when Jesus calls you to something, we don't need the full plan. We don't need to know everything to walk in obedience. So, yeah. Faith, say it like this. Faith isn't knowing the path. It's knowing the person of Jesus Christ and trusting in him to carry you along the path and get you to the ultimate destination that he has for you. I think that's what faith is, more than us knowing everything about how it's all going to work. It's funny. I'm sitting here talking to a video camera and I said this wouldn't be preachy, but I feel like I'm preaching at myself. I feel like I'm trying to I feel like I am talking to myself because there's no one here, but I feel like I'm telling this to me. Like I need to hear this. I need to be reminded of this. This is why I wanted to talk about this, by the way, because these are things that are happening in my life right now, is that I need this because I can think of so many areas in my life where I need it. and that picture of Peter just walking on the water and me wanting to walk on the water. And if you know the story, you know that there comes that point where Peter starts looking at the wind and the waves and he gets distracted and then he starts to sink. And there's been times when that's happened to me where I start off and I have this great, you know, calling from God, and I take this huge, the step of faith. We're going to do this thing, and then life happens, and you begin to get distracted, and you start worrying, and you start being afraid. You're not trusting as much, and all of a sudden the ground beneath you feels shaky. But what I love and what I have found true in my life is when that happens, it's bringing my focus back to Jesus, bringing my eyes back to him. And he is faithful to pick me up, to help me out, to restore me, to do whatever it takes to help me along the way, just like he did Peter. He picks Peter up, takes care of him, and he still does that today. And I love that, is that as we're faithfully walking with him and following him, even when we do stumble, even when we do mess it up and get distracted, that he is faithful to reach out and help us and to take care of us. And so it's just a good reminder that it's not about the situations going on around us. It's not about the things going on around us. It's about the person who is calling us. He's the voice we need to listen to. He's the person we need to keep our eyes on. He's the one we're answering. We're not answering the world. We're not answering everybody else. We are answering him with our callings. So we should only be listening to him in that. We should only be looking to him in that, not voices of fear or doubt, even from ourselves, negativity. We should only be listening and looking to him. So let's go back to the title of this and reflect on this for a second. And I'll pose a question to you. Again, the title is taking the next step when you don't know the whole path. So my question to you would be, what is one small step of faith that you can take to answer a calling that he's placed in your life? And you don't know the whole path. You don't know what the next step looks like. You don't know what step number 2 looks like. You don't have to. But what's the first step? The very first step. What's the first step that he's calling you to take? Don't worry about step 2, step 3, or the end. Worry about hearing his voice, answering his calling, and taking the very first faithful step. I've got some things to think about in my own life for that. So thank you for chatting with me today. I really enjoyed talking about this. I feel built up. I hope you do too. So let's chat again soon. We'll see you next time.